When 12-year-old Emily Carter quietly made her way toward the vast engine room of the USS Constellation during a routine family day at Naval Station Norfolk, Admiral Thomas King could not help but turn the moment into a public spectacle. He laughed off the young girl's assertion that she could assist in diagnosing the stubborn propulsion system that had baffled Navy engineers for several weeks. The experienced officer bet his reputation, insisting that no child could achieve what his expert team had not. However, when Emily rolled up her sleeve to reveal her late father's Naval Academy class ring and began discussing technical details that left seasoned sailors stunned, the Admiral's confident grin faded as quickly as his earlier assumptions about military families and the surprising knowledge they can possess. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story moves you, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow there is something truly special waiting for you. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the pier at Naval Station Norfolk as families gathered for the monthly community event aboard the USS Constellation. Helen Carter adjusted the strap of her well-worn purse and looked down at her daughter Emily, who walked quietly beside her. The 12-year-old had sandy brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail and wore her best jeans along with a navy blue sweater that had clearly seen better days. "Are you really sure you want to do this?" Helen asked gently, sensing her daughter's uncommon determination on this particular day. "What do you want to do today, sweetheart?" Helen inquired, her voice carrying the heaviness of someone who had asked the same question in various ways for several months. "We could just visit the commissary and then return home." Emily Carter's green eyes, so similar to her father's, were fixed on the enormous gray hull of the aircraft carrier before them. "I want to explore the engine room, Mom. Dad always said the heart of any ship beats in the engine room." Helen felt a tightness in her chest at the mention of her late husband. Lieutenant Commander James Carter had been gone for 2 years now, lost in a training accident that the Navy described with carefully chosen words about mechanical failure and pilot error. The settlement they had received helped cover immediate costs but could never fill the emptiness James left in their modest Norfolk apartment. "I understand you miss him, and the money helped, but these tours are usually quite simple. They probably will not even allow visitors inside the engine room," Helen explained, trying to maintain a gentle tone. "They will if I ask the right questions," replied Emily, her quiet confidence often surprising her mother. This was a quality she had inherited from James, along with his knack for mechanics and his habit of reading technical manuals like bedtime stories. They joined the swelling crowd of military families near the ship's gangway. Children ran between their parents' legs while teenagers attempted to look indifferent despite their clear excitement. Helen observed how the other military spouses gave polite nods but maintained their distance. Since James Carter's passing, she had felt increasingly like an outsider within the close community that had once warmly welcomed them. Captain Jennifer Ross stood at the top of the gangway, her spotless white uniform shining in the early sunlight. At 45, she earned respect through her skill rather than through intimidation, and her friendly smile helped visiting families feel comfortable. Next to her was Commander Alan Price, whose neatly pressed uniform and stiff posture indicated a deep commitment to protocol. His sharp features showed a hint of impatience as he glanced at his watch. "Welcome aboard the USS Constellation," Captain Ross said when the first group of families reached the deck. "We are honored to have you here today on our floating city. I am Captain Ross and this is Commander Price, my executive officer. We will take you on a tour revealing how 7,000 sailors coordinate to demonstrate American strength across the world seas." Emily Carter listened carefully. But her focus shifted to the faint vibrations beneath her feet. The ship's engines thrummed with a pulse that seemed slightly irregular, like a vehicle needing adjustment. She had spent many hours absorbed in her father's explanations of the complex mechanisms that kept modern warships running. The tour began on the flight deck where a petty officer showed how aircraft were securely launched and anchored. "Emily," she observed politely, yet her thoughts drifted toward the machinery below deck. When the group proceeded to explore the bridge, she stayed behind near a maintenance hatch, examining how it was sealed and marked. Chief Petty Officer Ray Palmer noticed the young girl's deep concentration. At 52, Ray had encountered many Navy families and could easily identify the children who truly grasped their parents' work. There was something about Emily's careful scrutiny that reminded him of the youngsters who eventually chose to serve. "Are you curious about how this old vessel operates?" Ray inquired, his weathered face breaking into a warm smile. Emily met his gaze with intensity. "My dad was an engineer. He told me that every system has its own signature, a distinct sound and feel when it runs correctly." "He sounds like a smart man," Ray responded, clearly impressed by her phraseology. "What type of engineer was he?" "Naval systems integration," Emily replied confidently. "He focused on propulsion efficiency and power distribution. He often said that the Nimitz-class carriers were feats of engineering, but they needed constant care to keep performing at their best." Ray raised his eyebrows slightly. Very few 12-year-olds could say propulsion efficiency and understand its meaning. "That's quite advanced. Did your dad teach you about engines?" "A bit," Emily said, then added softly, "before he passed away." Their talk was cut short by Commander Price's voice resonating across the deck. "Families, please remain with." Your assigned guide reminded everyone this was an active warship and not a place for play, which caused several children to instinctively move closer to their parents due to the commander's firm tone. "Ignore him," Ree quietly told Emily. "Commander Price, no change, expects everything to operate with precision like Swiss timepieces." As the group moved below decks, Emily found herself trailing near the rear. The passageways were narrow, lined with pipes and electrical wiring that served as the ship's vital arteries. She could hear the steady hum of machinery, but something about its rhythm unnerved her. They stopped outside the engine room, where heavy blast doors displayed warnings restricting access to authorized staff only. Through a small viewing window, Emily observed the enormous turbines that powered the ship's 4 propeller shafts. A young seaman began to describe the ship's power system. "The Constellation runs on 2 nuclear reactors that produce enough electricity to supply a city of 100,000 residents," the seaman explained. "Steam generated by these reactors powers turbines capable of propelling the ship beyond 30 knots." Emily moved closer to the glass, her trained ear detecting subtle irregularities in the engine's cadence. Having spent countless hours in her father James Carter's workshop learning to identify issues by sound alone, she realized what she heard now indicated a problem with synchronization. "There is a discrepancy between the main and auxiliary power systems." "Pardon me," Emily said, raising her hand as if she were in a classroom. "Is the port turbine's harmonic frequency experiencing an issue?" The young sailor looked puzzled. "I beg your pardon, what did you say?" "The vibration pattern suggests there could be a phase mismatch in the power connection." Emily continued, her tone becoming firmer despite the attention she was attracting. "My father always mentioned that such irregularities might point to worn bearings or restricted fluid flow." The tour group had come to a standstill, and several adults were watching the young girl discuss complex engineering topics with the ease of someone reading a simple list. Helen felt her face flush as she noticed Emily becoming the focus of everyone's attention. "Emily, dear, let's not trouble the kind sailor," Helen said softly, reaching for her daughter's hand. However, Commander Price had overheard the conversation, and his face transformed from annoyance to disbelief. "Young lady, did you just imply there might be a problem with our propulsion?" Emily held his gaze unwaveringly. "I did not imply anything, sir. I simply asked if there was an issue because the acoustic signature hints at a potential efficiency problem." "The acoustic signature," Commander Price echoed, his tone thick with doubt. "And you learned about acoustic signatures from your father?" "Yes, sir. He taught me that every mechanical the system reveals the problem if you know how to pay attention." Captain Ross had joined the group, intrigued by the unusual discussion. She observed Emily Carter with professional curiosity, noticing the young woman's composed manner and clear speech. "What was your father's role in the Navy?" "Lieutenant Commander James Carter, ma'am. He was a systems engineer focused on optimizing propulsion efficiency." The name clearly resonated with Captain Ross, whose face softened with familiarity. "Jim Carter, I knew your father. He was one of the finest engineers I ever had the chance to work alongside." Emily's expression brightened with pride, but Commander Price remained doubtful. "Captain, with all respect, this is a family tour, not a technical briefing. Maybe we should proceed with the planned itinerary." "Actually," Captain Ross responded thoughtfully, "we have faced some minor efficiency problems with the port turbine. Nothing grave, yet our engineers have not managed to pinpoint the cause." Emily's enthusiasm was barely restrained. "Could I review the diagnostic data? Dad taught me how to analyze performance metrics and spot unusual patterns." "Emily," Helen Carter said sharply, taken aback by her daughter's temerity. "You cannot simply request access to Navy technical documents." At that moment, Admiral Thomas King arrived, drawn by reports of an uncommon event during the family tour. At 58 years old, King was a seasoned officer who had advanced through the ranks by maintaining strict order and unshakable confidence in the military chain of command. His silver hair was impeccably styled, and his uniform displayed ribbons honoring 30 years of exceptional service. "What appears to be the issue here?" Admiral King inquired, his commanding voice silencing the background chatter. Commander Price promptly stood at attention. "Sir, a civilian dependent insists she can identify troubles with our propulsion system." Admiral King's eyes landed on Emily Carter, his expression a blend of amusement and disbelief. "Are you saying a child believes she can resolve engineering challenges that have baffled our expert technicians?" Emily felt the full force of his doubt, yet she recalled her father's advice about defending what you believe in. "I do not claim to fix anything, Admiral. I only observed something that might merit further inspection." "You observed something," Admiral King repeated, his tone revealing his low expectations of a 12-year-old's insights. "And what exactly caught your attention?" Emily's voice remained calm despite the increasing number of spectators. "The harmonic frequency of the port turbine indicates a phase mismatch which could signal bearing wear or a blockage in the steam feed pipes," she explained. Admiral King chuckled, though his amusement lacked warmth. "Harmonic frequency and phase mismatch, those are remarkable terms for someone your age." Emily felt her cheeks flushing, but she continued firmly. "My father always said, understanding comes through listening, not through rank or age." "Your father remarked, did he really?" Admiral King said with a condescending smile. "Well, young lady, I have been hearing ship engines for much longer than you have been alive, and I can guarantee that our engineering crew is fully capable of fixing any problems that may occur." The gathering swelled with sailors and relatives attracted by this unexpected exchange. Emily felt their stares and began to question herself. Perhaps she was mistaken. Perhaps she was embarrassing her mother and making a spectacle of herself. A flicker of doubt, but then she recalled sitting in her father's workshop hearing him describe how engines communicate with those fluent in their language. She remembered the pride in his voice when she accurately pinpointed an issue with their neighbor's car just by listening to it idle. She recalled his words about bravery and steadfastness. Emily rolled up the sleeve of her sweater, revealing a gold Naval Academy class ring that was clearly too big for her slender wrist. It hung from a plain chain resting against her forearm like a charm. The ring showed the graduating year 2001 and the initials JC. "This belonged to my father," Emily said softly. "He gave it to me before leaving for his final mission and told me it symbolized honor, courage and commitment." He explained, "Those were not mere words but heartfelt vows we make to one another and to our nation." The impact on the audience was swift and deep. Admiral King's assured demeanor faltered as he grasped the importance of what lay before him. A ring from the Naval Academy was no small matter, and the fact that this young individual wore it suggested a loss deeper than an ordinary family misfortune. Captain Ross advanced, her tone calm yet resolute. "Admiral, perhaps we should hear what Emily has to share. Sharing and preparing this tale took considerable time. So if you find it compelling, please subscribe to our channel as it truly means a great deal to us. Now, returning to the narrative. Admiral King focused long on the ring, his usual military composure fading as memories emerged. He had known James Carter, who had been recommended by Garrett for specialized training only months before the tragic incident. The gravity of that loss suddenly became personal in a manner no protocol could prepare him for. Lieutenant Michelle Lewis, whom Captain Ross called to, was a young officer nearby. "Please accompany our visitors to the engineering observation deck. I believe Miss Carter's concerns warrant our attention." Lieutenant Lewis, just 29 and still carving her path in the male-dominated engineering division, arrived with a blend of curiosity and professionalism. Her auburn hair was tied neatly as regulations required, and her green eyes reflected the sharp intellect that secured her role on the Constellation's technical team. "Ma'am, the observation deck is not ordinarily included in civilian tours," Lieutenant Lewis remarked cautiously, shifting her gaze between Captain Ross and Admiral King. "Today it is," Captain Ross answered with certainty. "Emily Carter has spotted a possible problem that our engineering team needs to investigate." Admiral King's jaw clenched as he realized the situation was slipping out of his hands. In 3 decades of service, he had never experienced his authority being questioned by a child, and the public nature of this challenge made backing down impossible. "Very well, Captain, but once this turns out to be nothing more than a child's imagination, I expect we can resume proper protocol." The group continued through the ship's hallways with Emily walking between her increasingly worried mother and the self-assured Lieutenant Lewis. The young officer felt a genuine interest in the girl's technical observations, having faced similar dismissive reactions in her own journey. "Tell me about those acoustic patterns your father taught you," Lieutenant Lewis asked while they went down toward the engineering section. "What exactly are you detecting?" Emily's expression lit up at the earnest question. "It's like when our old car was having transmission issues. Dad showed me how healthy engines keep a regular rhythm, but when parts wear out or misalign, you hear small interruptions in the pattern. And that's what you're noticing in our turbine." "Not exactly interruptions," Emily said, trying to find the right term. "More like when 2 musicians play the same piece, but one is slightly off beat. Dad called it phase displacement." Lieutenant Lewis acknowledged with a thoughtful nod. Phase displacement was truly a valid engineering challenge, particularly within intricate systems where numerous parts needed to operate flawlessly together. The fact that a 12-year-old could explain the idea indicated a depth of understanding beyond casual interest. They arrived at the engineering observation deck, an enclosed glass area that allowed visitors to see the gigantic turbine hull without accessing the restricted zones. The atmosphere buzzed with activity as sailors observed instruments and executed minor tweaks to the vessel's power mechanisms. Beyond the thick glass, Emily could make out the massive turbines propelling the ship's propellers. Chief Petty Officer Ray Palmer was already present, having been called by Captain Jennifer Ross. His weathered hands gripped a clipboard filled with performance metrics, and his face revealed a combination of doubt and intrigue that only 28 years of naval experience could produce. Captain Ross said, "Miss Carter believes she has found an issue with our port turbine. I want you to present her with the current performance data." Ray glanced briefly at Admiral Thomas King, whose impassive expression made his opinion clear. Then he looked back at Emily. "Well, miss, we have noticed some slight fluctuations in efficiency, but nothing beyond acceptable limits." Emily moved to the observation window, placed her ear against the glass, and closed her eyes to focus on the sound patterns beneath. The method seemed unusual, yet it precisely matched what her father had taught her for separating distinct acoustic signals from background noise. After almost 1 full minute of focused listening, Emily opened her eyes and faced the group once more. "The port turbine is operating at about 4% out of sync with the starboard engine. This discrepancy is insufficient to activate your automatic alarms, but it generates harmonic strain that will lead to bearing breakdown within 6 to 8 weeks. The accuracy of her forecast caused a wave of concern among the gathered naval officers. Ray Palmer glanced at his clipboard and then back at Emily with increasing admiration. "How could you possibly be aware of our synchronization tolerances?" he asked. Emily explained that her father had all the technical details for Nymphs-class propulsion systems. He mentioned that knowing the acceptable limits was just as crucial as recognizing a malfunction. Admiral King then advanced, clearly losing patience. "This is ridiculous. We possess advanced monitoring systems that would identify any major issues long before they become critical." Emily answered softly, "With all due respect, Admiral, sometimes the finest equipment is right here." She gently touched her ear. "Dad always said that seasoned engineers could detect problems that machines overlooked because devices measure only what they are programmed to, but they do not truly listen." Lieutenant Lewis felt torn between adhering to protocol and embracing genuine technical fascination. "Chief Palmer, what are the latest efficiency readings telling us?" Ray glanced at his clipboard once more, his face becoming increasingly contemplative. "The left side turbine is operating at 96.2% efficiency, while the right side turbine is at 99.8%. We believe the difference is due to typical fluctuations during normal operation." "That exact kind of fluctuation suggests early signs of bearing wear," Emily Carter stated with increasing assurance. "The left turbine is exerting extra effort to maintain consistent performance because internal friction is rising." Commander Alan Price, who had remained quiet throughout the technical exchange, finally broke his silence. "This is absurd. We are letting a child question the expertise of our entire engineering team based solely on what she thinks she perceives." Suddenly, a new voice interrupted. "Actually, the child might have a point." Everyone turned as Petty Officer First Class Mark Bennett came up from the turbine hull below. At 35, Mark had devoted 15 years to naval propulsion work, and his hands showed the marks of someone who tackled problems with practical tools rather than abstract theory. "Mark, what brings you up here?" Chief Palmer inquired. "I heard some talk about the left turbine," Mark answered, wiping his hands with a rag. "I thought I should mention that we've been tracking a vibration problem down there for about 3 weeks. Nothing serious, but it's been troubling me." Admiral King's confident demeanor began to falter. "Why wasn't this reported through official procedures?" "Because the readings were within acceptable limits," Admiral Mark explained. "Still, if I am being honest, something does not feel quite right. I have been meaning to remove the bearing inspection panels, but routine maintenance has kept us occupied." Emily looked up at her mother, seeking approval for the suggestion she was about to make. Helen Carter's face was pale from worry, yet she gave a slight nod, recognizing the determined look that had once belonged to her late husband. "What if I could demonstrate exactly where the issue lies?" Emily asked. "Dad taught me how to use sound analysis to identify bearing problems without needing to take anything apart." "Absolutely not," Commander Price said without hesitation. "Civilians are not permitted in engineering areas. Especially not children." "She would not need to enter the restricted zone," Lieutenant Lewis responded thoughtfully. "If Emily is correct about acoustic patterns, she could work from the observation platform while we transmit data from below." Admiral King found himself facing a difficult decision. Rejecting the girl's claims outright might make him appear foolish if she were right, but letting her assist with technical diagnostics would break every rule he had sworn to enforce. "This is very unconventional," Admiral King finally said. "However, if Miss Carter is willing to prove her expertise under strict supervision, I suppose we might permit a brief assessment." Emily felt a rush of nervous excitement. "I will need someone downstairs to take measurements at designated spots while I monitor from above. Additionally, if possible, I would like to review the maintenance records for the port turbine over the last 6 months. Chief Palmer and Mark Bennett exchanged looks. The young woman's request was exactly what any skilled engineer would ask for when troubleshooting a potential issue. I can fetch those logs for you, Ray said. Mark, are you up for taking some readings down there? Absolutely, Chief. This might finally reveal the cause of the vibration problem. As this spontaneous inspection began to unfold, Helen Carter gently pulled her daughter aside. Emily, dear, are you certain about this? If you're mistaken, it could be quite embarrassing. Emily met her mother's gaze with the serious demeanor she had inherited from her father. Mom, I've been listening to Dad's engine recordings every night since he passed away. I might be young, but I also understand what I'm hearing. The realization that Emily had been studying her father's technical recordings as a way to stay connected struck Helen deeply. She had believed her daughter was just playing around on the old laptop rather than engaging in serious technical analysis as a form of coping with grief. Oh, sweetie, Helen murmured, wrapping Emily in a brief embrace. Your father would be so proud of you. Meanwhile, Admiral King was engaged in a quiet yet intense discussion with Captain Ross. Jennifer, this is entirely without precedent. If we are mistaken in this matter, it casts a shadow on the entire chain of command. However, if she is correct, Admiral Captain Ross replied, what does it say about us if we dismiss valid technical concerns simply because they come from a 12-year-old? Admiral King firmly stated that rules are established for important reasons. Operational security, safety measures, and the command hierarchy cannot be disregarded just because a child has some theoretical understanding. Captain Ross observed the Admiral's expression, noticing the tension between his strict commitment to protocol and his increasing doubt that Emily Carter might actually understand what she was explaining. Thomas, you knew her father. James Carter was among the most talented engineers I have ever worked alongside. Could it really be so unlikely that he shared part of that expertise with his daughter? Admiral King noticed Emily quietly discussing diagnostic techniques with Lieutenant Lewis, appreciating the girl's professional attitude and technical terminology. Although uncertain, he could not deny that her knowledge appeared authentic. 5 minutes, Admiral King finally declared. She has 5 minutes to demonstrate her point, and then we resume standard operations. Emily caught the time constraint and felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. 5 minutes was hardly sufficient to perform a thorough acoustic analysis, but it had to suffice. She stepped toward the observation window, ready to apply her father's lessons under the ultimate pressure. Below in the turbine hall, Mark Bennett stood close to the port turbine, holding a portable vibration meter. Are you ready up there? He asked over the intercom. Emily pressed her ear firmly against the glass once more, shutting out everything around her to concentrate fully on the mechanical chorus beneath. In her mind, she heard her father's voice explaining how every part contributed to the distinct sound pattern, and how tiny shifts could expose issues before they worsened. Tell me what you hear, Lieutenant Lewis said quietly, genuinely interested in her analysis. Emily kept her eyes shut as she replied. The main turbine shaft is operating smoothly, but there is a secondary overtone about 15 cycles apart from the main frequency. This generally points to uneven wear on one of the support bearings. She paused and shifted slightly to improve her acoustic perspective. Mark, can you get a reading on the third bearing housing? It should be about shoulder height on the port side of the turbine casing. Through the intercom they heard Mark moving into place. Got it. The measurement shows 7 mm of extra vibration compared to the baseline. Emily opened her eyes, her expression reflecting the quiet pride of a confirmed diagnosis. Is that the problem? The bearing is showing signs of metal fatigue, likely caused by insufficient lubrication. If you inspect the oil pressure for that bearing, I expect you'll find it running roughly 10% below the ideal level. Lieutenant Lewis glanced at Chief Palmer with raised eyebrows. 7 millimeters was precisely the kind of slight discrepancy that remained within allowable limits, yet it could signal the initial phase of a component beginning to fail. Admiral King's expression shifted from doubt to reluctant attention. "Mark, verify the oil pressure on bearing number 3. The tension lingered as Mark examined the gauges and performed calculations below deck. At last, his voice came through the intercom with a crackle. "Oil pressure at bearing 3 is running at 41 psi. The specification requires between 45 and 50 psi. Emily turned toward Admiral King, her green eyes steady and assured. 4 psi might not sound significant, but over time it produces exactly the type of bearing deterioration that explains the acoustic pattern I'm detecting. If not addressed promptly, you will face a major overhaul instead of a routine maintenance adjustment." The observation deck fell quiet as the gravity of Emily's assessment settled in. She had not just spotted a real issue but did so with a level of accuracy that impressed even the most seasoned engineers present. Admiral King regarded Emily with a calculating look, as if re-evaluating a core belief. The silence stretched awkwardly before he spoke calmly. "Miss Carter, your diagnosis seems precise. Yet, finding a problem and fixing it are two very different challenges." Emily sensed there was a challenge in his voice along with the heavy weight of expectations from everyone observing. "What do you mean, sir?" "I mean," Admiral King said, moving closer to the observation window, "that any capable technician can identify the problem. The true measure of engineering expertise lies in knowing how to resolve it." Commander Price took advantage of the opportunity. "Admiral, surely we do not need to carry on with this demonstration. The young woman has made her point, and our engineering crew can manage the repairs following standard protocols." "Actually," Captain Ross interrupted, "I am eager to listen to Miss Carter's suggestions. Her father's method of problem-solving was always original." Emily felt the pressure of conflicting demands, but her father's voice resonated in her mind, reminding her that true confidence stems from understanding, not from trying to satisfy superiors. The oil pressure issue could stem from several causes, yet considering the age of this system and the maintenance records Chief Palmer showed me, I would suspect a partly obstructed oil distribution manifold. Lieutenant Lewis took out a tablet and began jotting down notes. "What leads you to think it is the manifold rather than a pump malfunction?" "Because the other bearings receive adequate oil pressure," Emily explained, getting more engaged in the technical debate. "If it were a pump problem, pressure drops would appear across several points, but since the problem is limited to bearing number 3, the obstruction must be located downstream." "The main distribution point," Mark Bennett's voice echoed over the intercom from below. The children were correct. "We replaced the main oil pump 8 months ago, but the manifold is still the original part installed when the ship was launched," Emily pointed out. "It has accumulated deposits over 23 years, she added. Her father always said oil systems resemble arteries, they need frequent cleaning to avoid blockages that might cause failures." Admiral King's usual stern demeanor softened slightly around his eyes when he asked, "And how would you suggest we clear this blockage, Miss Carter?" Emily inhaled deeply, realizing her response would decide if she was respected as an expert or dismissed as an inquisitive youngster. "First, you isolate bearing number 3 from the oil distribution, flush the manifold lines with solvent to clear the deposits, then perform a pressure test to ensure proper flow before reactivating the bearing," she explained. "That takes about 12 hours to complete," Chief Palmer remarked in surprise. "How do you know the timing so precisely?" "My dad made me learn maintenance schedules for critical systems," Emily replied quietly. "He believed understanding time and resource demands was as vital as mastering technical steps." The revelation that James Carter had trained his daughter in such detailed engineering knowledge left the group visibly impressed, showing a remarkable depth of skill. Education that extended well beyond simple father-daughter chats. Helen Carter observed her daughter with increasing amazement. She had always known Emily was intelligent and had picked up some of James Carter's technical insights, yet the true extent of her knowledge was only becoming evident now. "Emily, when did your father share all this with you?" "Every weekend for 3 years," Emily answered, her voice tinged with a touch of nostalgia. "He told me engineering was more than a profession. It was a lens through which to understand how everything around us functioned. He aimed to teach me to approach challenges with his perspective." Dr. Barbara Wright, who had been quietly watching from nearby, then stepped forward. As the ship's lead psychologist, she understood deeply how military children manage the unique pressures of their environment. She said, "Emily, your father gave you an extraordinary gift. Not merely the technical skill but the self-assurance to rely on what you observe." Emily returned the older woman's smile with gratitude, feeling a rare connection since her father's passing. "Dad used to say being correct meant nothing if you were afraid to voice it." Admiral King, no change, found his thoughts drifting to his own daughter, who studied literature at a civilian school and never showed interest in his military work. The notion that a father could transfer such specialized expertise to his child challenged everything he believed about family ties and professional limits. "Miss Carter," Admiral King spoke slowly. "Assuming your diagnosis is accurate and our engineering team follows your suggested repair steps, how sure are you that this will fix the efficiency problems we have been encountering?" Emily paused to think carefully, aware that her response would be evaluated not only for its technical correctness but also for her professional modesty. "I am confident that the oil pressure problem is responsible for the bearing issues I found. However, my father always said that complicated systems often have several faults, and solving one problem can sometimes uncover others. This means that fixing the oil flow should enhance the bearing's function and lessen the irregular vibrations I detected. Still, you should probably perform a full diagnostic check after the repair to ensure no other problems have been hidden by this one." Lieutenant Lewis glanced up from her tablet, clearly admiring Emily's systematic reasoning. "That is exactly what we do following any major maintenance task. You truly have received excellent training." The compliment meant more to Emily than any adult approval she had gained since her father passed away. For months, her technical expertise had felt like a painful reminder of her loss. Now, for the first time, it seemed to be a meaningful way to honor her father's memory. Commander Price, meanwhile, remained doubtful about the entire matter. "Admiral, although Miss Carter's technical skills are remarkable for her age, we must still adhere to established protocols. Maintenance choices must be handled by experienced personnel following the correct procedures." "You are absolutely correct, Commander," Admiral King responded. "That is why Chief Palmer will work alongside our engineering team to carry out the suggested repairs. Miss Carter's involvement concludes with her diagnostic input." Emily felt a brief wave of disappointment, yet she recognized the realities of military protocol. "That makes sense, sir. I hope everything goes well with the repairs." "Actually," Captain Ross said thoughtfully, "there might be another way Miss Carter could assist in this process." Admiral King's eyebrows lifted in curiosity. "Captain, our engineering training program for junior officers could gain from someone who brings a different understanding of diagnostic methods. Miss Carter's approach to acoustic analysis might offer valuable insight for our newer team members." Emily's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "You mean I could teach others what my father showed me, in a controlled and limited way?" Captain Ross explained, "Perhaps a short presentation to our junior engineering staff on acoustic diagnostic techniques. It could become part of our ongoing education series." Admiral King paused, carefully considering the unusual nature of such a plan against the potential benefits of Emily's unique expertise. "That would be quite exceptional, Captain." "Yes, sir, it certainly would be. But so is having her knowledge. A 12-year-old succeeded in identifying a propulsion issue that our usual monitoring systems failed to detect." Lieutenant Lewis found herself intrigued by the possibility. "Admiral, We have been exploring ways to improve our diagnostic training. Established techniques place great emphasis on instrument readouts, yet acoustic analysis has become a forgotten skill in contemporary engineering. Dad always mentioned that the veterans could pinpoint problems simply by listening, whereas younger engineers depended too much on computers, Emily added. He believed both methods were valuable. The reference to traditional versus modern engineering approaches sparked a discussion that Admiral King had grappled with throughout his career. The Navy's growing dependence on automated systems had certainly enhanced safety and productivity. However, it had also produced a generation of officers who occasionally lacked the instinctive insight gained through direct experience. Miss Carter, Admiral King stated at last, if we were to organize such a presentation, would you be willing to explain not only what you noticed but also how you learned to detect these signs? Emily nodded enthusiastically. Dad always said that teaching others was the best way to ensure you truly mastered a subject yourself. Helen Carter experienced a wave of maternal pride mixed with worry. Her daughter was clearly excelling in this technical setting, yet the spotlight and responsibilities seemed daunting for someone who still needed assistance to reach objects placed up high. Shelves. Admiral Helen Carter spoke quietly, I value the chance you are considering for Emily, but she is still very young. I want to ensure this does not become too overwhelming for her. Dr. Wright nodded in agreement with Helen's concerns. Mrs. Carter brings up an important point. Any educational role must be suitable for her age and voluntary, with clear limits on Emily's responsibilities. Naturally, Admiral King replied, this would be a single educational event, not an ongoing duty. Miss Carter would only share her knowledge with our junior officers and then return to her usual routine. Emily glanced between her mother and the Admiral, sensing that this moment was more than just a chance to discuss engines. It was a way to honor her father's memory while possibly helping others gain valuable skills. Mom, I truly want to do this, Emily said sincerely. It would make me feel like Dad's teaching still benefits people even though he is no longer here. Helen noticed the hope and resolve in her daughter's eyes and saw the same passion that had motivated James throughout his career. Although she worried about the unusual circumstances, she recognized that this could be exactly what Emily needed to cope with her loss in a positive way. If the Admiral believes it is the right choice, Helen said cautiously. And if Emily wishes to participate, then I suppose we could give it a try. Admiral King found himself endorsing a plan that contradicted every guideline concerning civilian participation in military training. However, as he observed Emily Carter's face brighten with enthusiasm, he understood that leadership sometimes requires acknowledging unique situations and responding with adaptability instead of strict rule following. Very well, Admiral King declared with formality. Chief Palmer, coordinate with Lieutenant Lewis to arrange a brief demonstration for our junior engineering staff. Miss Carter will showcase acoustic diagnostic methods as part of our ongoing professional development program. What began as an unscheduled technical discussion had transformed into an unexpected opportunity, initiating a chain of events that would challenge conventional ideas about expertise, authority, and the significance of unorthodox knowledge. 3 days later, Emily stood near Conference Room B within the ship's administrative area, holding a folder filled with her father James Carter's handwritten notes on acoustic diagnostics. She had spent the previous night carefully organizing the information with her mother Helen Carter's assistance, aiming to convert intricate engineering theories into presentations digestible and practical for naval officers. Lieutenant Lewis appeared beside her, carrying a laptop and showing the slightly anxious look of someone overseeing an unprecedented occasion. Are you prepared for this, Emily? He asked. I believe so, Emily answered, though her mind fluttered as if filled with butterflies. Last night, my mom helped me rehearse, although she is not an engineer, so I was unsure if my explanations were clear. They will make sense, Lieutenant Lewis reassured her. I went over your outline yesterday, and your method is actually more organized than some of the materials we use to train new officers. Through the small window of the conference room, Emily noticed about 12 junior officers arranging chairs and preparing equipment. Most of them seemed to be in their 20s or early 30s, young enough to recall times when they had been underestimated, yet experienced enough to doubt whether a youngster could offer them anything valuable. Captain Ross appeared from her office down the corridor, walking with the determined gait that commanded respect across the fleet. "Miss Carter, I appreciate you agreeing to share your expertise with our team. This type of learning across generations is exactly what the Navy requires to keep advancing." Emily felt some of her tension ease under Captain Ross's confidence. "My father always said that knowledge only matters if you pass it on to those who can benefit from it." "Wise man," Captain Ross commented, "are you ready to respond to questions about your techniques?" "Yes, ma'am. Dad taught me that truly understanding something means you should be able to explain it in several different ways until everyone understands." Captain Ross smiled, recognizing the familiar spirit of Lieutenant Commander Carter's educational approach. James had gained a reputation for his skill in. Their goal was to make complicated systems accessible to sailors regardless of their technical background. As they stepped into the conference room, the assembled officers stood up in respect for Captain Ross. Emily noticed that their faces showed a mix of curiosity, doubt, and a few with barely hidden smiles, as if adults about to be instructed by someone only 12 years old. "Relax, everyone," Captain Ross said, signaling for them to take their seats. "Today's talk is part of our continuous professional growth program. Miss Emily Carter will explain acoustic diagnostic methods that might improve your problem-solving skills." Ensign Kevin O'Brien, recently graduated from the Naval Academy and eager to demonstrate his technical expertise, leaned forward with clear doubt. "Captain, with all respect, acoustic analysis typically demands many years of training and practical experience. How could someone so young possess such knowledge?" Emily felt a flush rise to her cheeks, but remembered her father's advice to respond with facts rather than feelings. "Ensign O'Brien, you are right that acoustic studies usually take extensive experience. However, my father began teaching me these skills when I was 9 years old, so I have actually been learning for 3 years." "3 years?" Ensign O'Brien echoed, implying that this seemed insufficient. "Yes, sir. My father explained that children's hearing is actually more sensitive than adults. Adults perceive sounds differently across various frequency ranges, and we do not hold fixed ideas about how engines are meant to sound." Lieutenant Junior Grade Sarah Hayes, who had been dealing with a stubborn hydraulic issue on her assigned aircraft, suddenly found herself truly curious. "Miss Carter, what exactly did your father teach you about frequency analysis?" Emily opened her folder and retrieved a sheet filled with her father's meticulous handwriting along with her own childish annotations in the margins. "He taught me that every mechanical system produces a distinctive acoustic signature influenced by its design and condition. When parts begin to wear or malfunction, this signature shifts in consistent ways." She stepped to the front of the room, her initial anxiety replaced by excitement for the topic. "For instance, wear-on bearings causes harmonic distortions that appear at specific multiples of the shaft's rotation frequency. If one knows what to listen for, problems can be detected weeks earlier than with traditional monitoring tools." Petty Officer Second Class David Kim, who had been working on aircraft engines for 8 years, glanced up from his notes with surprise. "That is exactly what the old chief taught me about helicopter transmissions, but I have never seen it applied to ship systems." "The principles remain the same," Emily explained, growing more confident as she recognized acknowledgement in David's tone. "Dad taught me how to identify the fundamental frequencies of different elements and then listen closely for the harmonics that reveal emerging issues." Lieutenant Lewis connected her laptop to the projection system in the room. Emily had prepared several audio samples to illustrate these ideas. "Why do you not guide us through what you are hearing?" Emily nodded and selected the first audio clip. The room was filled with the deep and steady rhythm of a large engine running without issues. This represents a healthy turbine working within normal limits. Pay attention to how the main frequency remains consistent and the harmonics are barely present. She switched to the next file, and the officers heard a subtly altered sound pattern. To many, it seemed almost indistinguishable from the first recording, but Emily's experienced ear immediately noticed the changes. This turbine shows early signs of bearing degradation on the high-pressure section. You can detect a slight frequency change every third rotor spin, indicating uneven bearer's load. Ensign O'Brien furrowed his brow, struggling to hear the differences Emily mentioned. I cannot identify the variations you are referring to. That is normal, Emily replied kindly. My father said it took him 2 years of practice to regularly recognize subtle malfunctions. But once you understand what to listen for, it becomes clear. She played the clip again, this time explaining the exact moments where the frequency inconsistency appeared. Gradually, a number of officers began to nod as they recognized the patterns Emily was explaining. Chief Warrant Officer Gary Mitchell, who had dedicated 23 years to maintaining naval systems, spoke with reluctant admiration. Miss Carter, what you are describing resembles the traditional diagnostic methods we used before computerized monitoring was introduced. Exactly, Emily responded enthusiastically. My father explained that while computers excel at measurement, they can only identify issues they are programmed to detect. Human hearing can sense irregularities that do not match standard failure patterns. Lieutenant J.G. Hayes challenged this by saying, surely modern diagnostic tools are more reliable than human senses. Emily thought carefully before replying. Not necessarily more reliable, but they are more precise. Computers can measure vibration amplitude up to 6 decimal places, yet they might overlook a bearing failing in an unconventional manner because it does not fit their programming. She then played another audio clip. Here is a bearing with cracks forming on its inner race. The computer monitoring system indicated all values were within normal limits until it suddenly failed catastrophically. However, the sound signature of the cracking is audible if you know what to listen for. The room fell quiet as the officers absorbed the significance of Emily's explanation. Although modern naval systems depended heavily on automated monitoring, the thought that critical malfunctions might occur without detection was unsettling. Chief Mitchell reclined in his chair, wearing a contemplative expression. We faced a comparable situation last year on the USS Hampton. The hydraulic pump's diagnostics all indicated green until it suddenly ceased completely during flight operations. What type of sound pattern did it produce before the failure? Emily inquired with professional curiosity. Upon reflection, there was a peculiar whining noise for about a week preceding the failure. We reported it, but since the diagnostic reports showed everything normal, the maintenance team did not prioritize it. Emily nodded thoughtfully. High-pitched whining often signals fluid cavitation or internal wear. My father taught me that hydraulic systems are particularly challenging because issues tend to escalate more quickly than in mechanical systems. Lieutenant Lewis observed the conversation with great intrigue. Emily was engaging in discussions about intricate technical failures with seasoned naval staff as though she were an equal rather than merely a youngster. The extent of her expertise was becoming increasingly undeniable. Miss Carter, Lieutenant Lewis addressed her, would you be willing to demonstrate how to methodically analyze an unfamiliar acoustic signature? Emily's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Dad showed me a detailed method to dissect complex sounds into their individual frequency components. Would you like me to illustrate this on a live system? Captain Ross, who had been silently watching from the rear of the room, stepped forward. What exactly did you have in mind? Upon boarding today, I noticed that one of the aircraft elevators was emitting an unusual noise. If I had the chance to listen to it during operation, I might be able to showcase real-time acoustic diagnostics. This proposal sparked interest among the officers present. Aircraft elevators are essential components of the flight deck, and any malfunction could impact combat activities. Mr. King appeared doubtful. Miss Carter, these elevators undergo daily inspections by trained technicians. I believe any faults would have been detected through standard maintenance routines. That is likely, Emily responded. However, my father often said there is a difference between something being broken and something not performing at its best. Even if the elevator complies with all safety standards, efficiency problems might exist and deserve attention. Chief Mitchell rose, his intrigue outweighing his earlier doubt. Captain, if Miss Carter is prepared to apply her method on an operational system, it could provide valuable learning for everyone here. Captain Ross, no change, reflected on the suggestion. While aircraft elevators are crucial systems that receive constant oversight, if Emily could spot issues before they escalate, it would prove her diagnostic method far beyond what simple audio recordings could offer. Very well, the captain concluded, we will relocate this demonstration to the flight deck so Miss Carter can perform live acoustic analysis. This is purely an educational analysis, but I want to emphasize that any decisions regarding maintenance will be carried out through the proper channels following a thorough assessment. Emily experienced a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Showing her abilities on a recorded audio was one matter, yet conducting a live analysis in front of seasoned naval officers would truly challenge all the lessons her father had imparted to her. As the team got ready to move toward the flight deck, Lieutenant Lewis noticed Emily's hands trembling slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked. Emily met the young officer's gaze, who had become her supporter. "I believe so. It's just that this is my first opportunity to teach my dad's methods to others. I want to ensure I do it correctly." "You're doing an excellent job," Lieutenant Lewis encouraged her. "Your father would be proud of how you're passing on his expertise." His words brought tears to Emily's eyes but also strengthened her determination. This moment was not only about proving her own skills but also about paying tribute to her father's heritage and guaranteeing his groundbreaking engineering approach would endure beyond him. The flight deck of the USS Constellation spread out under the afternoon sun like a miniature city. Aircraft were lined up neatly while deck crews carried out their tasks with practiced precision. Emily felt the salty breeze brushing through her hair as she followed Captain Ross and the other officers toward the large aircraft elevator that connected the hangar deck with the flight operations zone. Aviation Bosun's Mate Chief Paul Stevens awaited them, his weathered visage revealing the doubt of a man who had devoted 20 years to maintaining flight deck equipment. At 42 years old, Paul had encountered every conceivable type of system malfunction and placed greater confidence in first-hand experience than in theoretical concepts. "Captain, I heard you plan to perform some kind of test on elevator number 2, Paul stated, his tone polite yet cautious. "The system cleared all safety inspections this morning, and flight operations are set to begin in 4 hours. "Chief Stevens, this is Miss Emily Carter," Captain Ross introduced. "She will be demonstrating acoustic diagnostic methods that could assist us in detecting maintenance concerns before they escalate into serious issues." Paul glanced at Emily with barely hidden skepticism. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that elevator moves aircraft weighing 30,000 pounds. It is hardly a device for training purposes." Emily recognized his apprehension and felt the immense responsibility pressing upon her. "Chief Stevens, I am not requesting control of the equipment or any alterations to procedures. I simply want to listen while you conduct your routine operational tests." "Listen to what exactly?" Emily approached the elevator platform, observing the enormous hydraulic pistons and cable mechanisms driving the system. Each elevator produces a unique acoustic pattern when functioning correctly. Variations in that sound profile can signal emerging difficulties with hydraulics, bearings, or structural elements. She knelt next to one of the hydraulic units, holding her ear close to the casing without actually making contact. Her father had taught her that hydraulic systems are particularly informative because the movement of fluid generates distinctive sound patterns when everything operates properly. Thomas King, who had grown increasingly doubtful during the day, stepped forward. "Miss Carter, these systems are already overseen by advanced pressure detectors and flow gauges. If there were any issues, we would be alerted." "Perhaps," Emily responded calmly. "But my father always said that sensors show what is happening at the moment, while listening to the sounds can sometimes forecast what might go wrong next." Chief Mitchell, who had been quietly watching Emily's careful technique, found himself recalling his early days under veteran chiefs who diagnosed faults just by smell and noise. Chief Stevens might be willing to let her listen. "It cannot harm anything, and we might gain insight." Paul glanced between the gathered officers and the focused young woman who spoke about hydraulics like a seasoned expert. Despite his reservations, curiosity about her findings took hold. "Very well," Paul agreed at last. "However, this is an active system with strict safety rules. No one touches any controls. If I say stop, we stop immediately." Emily nodded energetically. "Understood, Chief. Please run the elevator through a full cycle." While listening from various spots, Paul moved over to the control station and activated the elevator's descent sequence. The huge platform began to lower smoothly toward the hangar deck, the hydraulic pumps humming with the precise power of advanced engineering. Emily positioned herself close to the main hydraulic manifold, closing her eyes in deep concentration as she focused on subtle sound changes that most would simply dismiss as ordinary operational noise. The gathered officers observed in awe as she methodically moved around the elevator machinery, pausing at selected points to listen carefully. "The primary pump sounds stable," Emily declared without opening her eyes. "Fluid flow is strong, pressure steady, and no cavitation within the main lines." Lieutenant J.G. Hayes was jotting down notes, genuinely intrigued by Emily's detailed technique. He asked, "What exactly are you listening for in the pump?" She replied, "A smooth, steady frequency without any irregular harmonic patterns," and then moved toward the next hydraulic system. Emily explained that as pumps begin to wear out, they emit distinct whining or grinding noises that signal bearing issues or impeller damage. She stopped near the secondary hydraulic circuit, her face showing increased focus. After nearly 30 seconds of concentrated listening, she opened her eyes with a slight frown. Paul checked his control panel and asked, "Chief Stevens, what is the normal operating pressure for the secondary hydraulic circuit?" "The secondary circuit operates at 2,800 psi during standard procedures, presently registering 2,790 psi. Emily Carter's expression grew more serious. "That 10 psi difference may appear minor, but it is causing a slight fluctuation in pressure within the secondary manifold. You can detect it as a very faint pulsing noise occurring every 3 to 4 seconds. "I don't hear any pulsing," Ensign O'Brien said dismissively. Emily stepped closer to the secondary manifold housing and signaled for him to come over. "Place your ear right here and listen closely for about 30 seconds. The pulse is subtle, but once you notice it, it becomes unmistakable." With some hesitation, Ensign O'Brien knelt beside Emily, pressing his ear where she indicated. For the initial 20 seconds, only the usual hum of hydraulic activity was audible. Then slowly, a faint rhythmic variation emerged within the background sound. "I think I am hearing something," he admitted reluctantly, describing it like a very quiet heartbeat. "Exactly," Emily said enthusiastically. "That pulsing points to a slight obstruction in fluid flow, likely due to partial clogging in one of the filter units." Chief Stevens was now closely observing, his professional doubt giving way to genuine technical interest. "Miss Carter, if you are correct about a flow restriction, what sort of issues could that lead to?" Emily reflected thoughtfully, recalling her father's lessons about system interactions and modes of failure. "In the near term, probably nothing critical. The system would continue to fulfill safety standards and functional requirements, yet over time, the limitation would increase wear on the pump parts and might cause pressure variations that impact elevator timing. She stopped for a moment, observing the control displays from where she was standing. More importantly, if the limitation worsens, pressure drops could occur during heavy load operations. That scenario might not pose a direct threat but could compromise efficiency on the flight deck during combat situations. The significance of Emily Carter's analysis resonated among the group of officers. Flight deck performance was vital to naval air operations, and any element influencing aircraft launch and recovery cycles was treated with utmost care. Lieutenant Lewis was quickly jotting down notes on his tablet. "Emily, what would be your suggestion to tackle this possible limitation?" "My father always advised that hydraulic issues should be addressed methodically," he said. Emily responded, "I would begin by inspecting the secondary circuit's filter units for any buildup of debris and then measure flow rates at varying pressure levels to pinpoint where the restriction arises." Chief Stevens found himself agreeing with Emily's approach. Acknowledging the clear and rational steps any skilled hydraulic technician would take. This represents the usual diagnostic process for flow problems. What sets Emily apart is that she identified the issue was detected through sound analysis long before it appeared in standard diagnostics. Lieutenant Lewis noted. "If her assessment is correct, we could fix it during usual upkeep instead of waiting for it to worsen." Captain Ross had been attentive to the technical conversation, increasingly impressed by Emily Carter's systematic strategy. "Chief Stevens, when is the next maintenance session scheduled for this elevator?" "We have a 4-hour slot next Tuesday during light flight operations," Paul answered. "That's an ideal opportunity to inspect those filter components if Emily's analysis holds." Emily felt a strong sense of accomplishment at being valued by seasoned naval officers, yet she also recalled her father's advice about not getting overly confident. "Chief Stevens, I might be mistaken about how serious the blockage is. Dad always mentioned that sound analysis should guide traditional tests, not replace them." "Understood," Paul replied, his regard for Emily evidently increasing. "But even if you are only partly correct, it is worth investigating. We have learned to trust unusual insights from those who really know what they are observing." O'Brien, who had been doubtful at first, started to rethink his views on knowledge and experience. "Miss Carter, how do you tell the difference between normal fluctuations in operations and genuine faults?" Emily welcomed the sincere question. She recognized it as a sign that she was effectively passing on her father's lessons. Her father taught her that every system has a fundamental acoustic signature when it functions properly. Once you become familiar with this baseline, any changes immediately stand out. She pointed toward the elevator machinery. This system's baseline includes the main pump's frequency, how the fluid flows, and the mechanical noises produced by the lifting equipment. When a sound appears that does not match the usual pattern, that signals the need for further inspection. However, mastering these baselines requires years of hands-on experience. Lieutenant J.G. Hayes noticed this as well. Emily agreed, explaining that her father believed children have some benefits when it comes to learning acoustics. Since children do not have fixed ideas about how something should sound, they simply absorb the patterns without any biases. Dr. Barbara Wright, who had been attentively watching the demonstration from a professional perspective, stepped forward. She said, "Emily, that idea about learning without bias is fascinating. Your father was undoubtedly a remarkable instructor and a skilled engineer." Emily's face lit up with fond memories of weekend sessions in her father's workshop. He always insisted that teaching was a type of engineering itself. You had to comprehend how someone's mind functioned before guiding them to solve problems. This remark struck a chord with many officers who had found traditional military training challenging. Methods focused more on rote learning than true comprehension. Emily's method for diagnostic procedures appeared to close the gap between theoretical concepts and hands-on practice. Chief Mitchell glanced up from his notes, clearly impressed by what he had observed. Captain, this form of diagnostic instruction might prove extremely useful for all our technical staff. We often dedicate too much effort to repairing issues after they occur, but not nearly enough time to learning how to prevent them. I agree, Captain Ross responded. Emily, would you be open to collaborating with Chief Stevens to record your acoustic analysis methods? Not as a permanent task, but as a contribution to our educational resources. Emily glanced at her mother, Helen Carter, who had been quietly observing from a respectful distance during the demonstration. Helen gave an encouraging nod, recognizing that this opportunity was deeply meaningful for her daughter's sense of purpose and connection to her father's heritage. I would be honored to assist, Emily said sincerely. Dad always believed that knowledge is only valuable if it helps others improve their work. As the group readied to leave the flight deck, Emily experienced a profound satisfaction that surpassed a mere personal success. For the first time since her father's passing, she truly felt his wisdom was making a tangible impact and that his legacy would live on through those she was instructing. News of Emily Carter's remarkable diagnostic achievements circulated throughout the ship with a swiftness that only naval networks could match. By nightfall, these reports had reached the Pentagon via official routes and beyond, traveling through informal channels linking military families worldwide. What started as a straightforward family event was rapidly transforming into a challenge against core beliefs about expertise and institutional knowledge. Rear Admiral Kenneth Howard sat in his Pentagon office, scrutinizing the official document that had landed on his desk just an hour ago. At 61, Kenneth had dedicated his career to preserving structure and consistency within naval operations. The fact that a 12-year-old civilian had pinpointed several technical faults that trained personnel had overlooked unsettled him deeply. His aide, Commander Patricia Wells, knocked and came in carrying additional paperwork. She said, "Sir, I have the technical reports you requested concerning the USS Constellation incidents." Kenneth took the documents without raising his eyes from the screen. Then he asked, "Commander, from your professional perspective, how should the Navy address this matter?" Patricia was ready for the inquiry, having thoroughly examined relevant precedents. She responded, "Sir, there are no exact examples of civilian reliance for technical advice in naval operations. Still, the precision of the diagnosis indicates genuine expertise that cannot be disregarded merely because of her age or civilian status. Yet you surely grasp the consequences if we officially acknowledge a child's technical contributions," Kenneth said at last, glancing up from his screen. "It threatens the chain of command that ensures discipline and efficient operations." With the utmost respect, Admiral, Patricia responded with care. It could also signal that the Navy appreciates innovation and acknowledges skill no matter the source. Kenneth's face tightened somewhat. He had dedicated 30 years advancing within naval ranks by adhering to established protocols and honoring traditional command structures. The idea that a 12-year-old might provide valuable input on complex technical tasks felt like a direct affront to all he had worked to build. Meanwhile, aboard the Constellation, Emily was discovering the unexpected effects of her recent recognition. During dinner in the enlisted mess, sailors approached her table with questions about equipment they struggled to fix. It had become known that the young engineer could identify issues that confounded standard analysis. Seaman recruit Kevin Brooks, a 19-year-old who had initially admired Emily's expertise, sat across from her with clear enthusiasm. "Miss Carter, we have a problem with one of the galley refrigeration systems. It keeps the food chilled, but it produces a strange clicking noise nobody can explain." Emily scanned the mess hall, noticing that their discussion was attracting glances from sailors at nearby tables. The sense of pressure felt heavier than anything she had encountered during her formal presentations. "Kevin, I am grateful you asked, but I believe I should probably stick to the official training sessions that Captain Ross arranged," Emily replied tactfully. "I do not want to disrupt regular maintenance routines." Her mother, Helen, who had been quietly eating next to her, sensed the tension in Emily's voice. Since the flight deck demonstration, Helen had observed her daughter grapple with the attention and responsibility that came with her unexpected recognition. "Emily is right," Helen said softly. "She is still young, and this has already been a very long day for her." However, Kevin was persistent, fueled by youthful eagerness. "It would only take a minute to listen. The refrigeration specialists are stumped, and if the unit completely breaks, it could impact food service for the entire ship." Emily felt conflicted between wanting to assist and realizing that her knowledge came with duties she was unsure she could fulfill. The refrigeration issue seemed like something her father, James Carter, might have solved, but she had no experience with food service machinery. Before she could reply, Chief Petty Officer Ray Palmer approached their table with the deliberate pace of someone carrying official matters. "Miss Carter, Captain Ross wishes to meet with you in her quarters once you have finished your meal." Emily's stomach clenched with nervousness. Official discussions with ship commanders usually implied serious talks about critical issues. "Did I make a mistake, Chief Palmer?" "Absolutely not," Ray reassured her with a gentle smile. "Nevertheless, there are some new developments that the captain wants to discuss with you and your mother." About 20 minutes later, Emily and Helen sat inside Captain Ross's personal quarters, a small yet cozy area that balanced military precision with a touch of personal comfort. Captain Ross poured coffee for Helen and offered Emily a soda before taking her seat behind the desk. "Emily, I want to start by expressing how impressed I am with your expertise and professionalism," Captain Ross said. "Your input has already led to important maintenance findings that will enhance our efficiency." Emily felt a surge of pride, but she also suspected that Captain Ross was preparing to bring up something more complicated. "Thank you, ma'am." "Yet," Captain Ross went on, "your achievements have caused some unforeseen difficulties that we must address." She pulled out a tablet and displayed several emails. "I have received requests from other vessels seeking your diagnostic support. The USS Abraham Lincoln is dealing with a propulsion issue that their engineers have yet to fix. Additionally, the USS Enterprise would like you to assess their aircraft launching systems." Helen Carter felt a wave of unease. "Captain, those sound like far more complicated challenges than what Emily Carter has handled here." "That is exactly what worries me." Captain Jennifer Ross agreed. "Emily's expertise is remarkable, but she is still a 12-year-old with limited hands-on experience. I fear the Navy might attempt to rely on her skills in ways that do not suit her age or development." Emily glanced between the two women, realizing for the first time that her technical talents carried consequences beyond her personal world. "Are you telling me I cannot assist other ships?" she asked. "What I mean is that we must set firm limits on how and when you are involved in naval missions," Captain Ross clarified. "Your father's expertise is crucial, but you should not bear responsibility for issues that seasoned engineers are meant to manage." Their discussion was cut short by a knock at the door. Captain Ross opened it to see Commander Alan Price in the hallway, clearly disturbed. "Captain, I am sorry to interrupt, but there is a situation unfolding that demands prompt attention." Captain Ross gestured him inside, noticing the urgency in his demeanor. "What is the matter, Commander?" Commander Price informed her that Admiral Thomas King had received instructions from the Pentagon to halt all civilian participation in technical operations until a formal investigation is completed. He stated this order takes effect immediately. Emily Carter is now prohibited from engaging in any repair or diagnostic tasks. Emily Carter felt her face go pale. "Does this mean I cannot complete the training documentation we began?" Commander Price replied with a barely hidden sense of satisfaction that proper military procedures are being reinstated. Captain Ross's face darkened with controlled frustration. "Commander, who exactly authorized these orders?" "Rear Admiral Howard's office. The directive cited security concerns and questioned the suitability of civilian participation in sensitive technical operations." Helen Carter reached out and held her daughter's hand, sensing Emily's disappointment radiating strongly. "Emily, dear." This does not mean your efforts lack significance. Yet Emily understood the broader consequences of the situation. Her brief moment of recognition and purpose was being overshadowed by institutional issues unrelated to her actual abilities or input. "Captain Ross," Emily said softly, "did I cause difficulties for you by trying to assist?" The question struck Jennifer Ross like a heavy blow. Here was a young person who had genuinely contributed to naval operations asking if their efforts had become a problem. It perfectly revealed the flaw in an institutional approach that valued protocol over creativity. "Emily, you did not cause any trouble," Captain Ross answered firmly. "You identified real technical challenges and shared important knowledge that will help protect sailors. That is precisely what your father would have wanted you to do." Commander Price shifted uneasily, sensing the subtle reprimand hidden in Captain Ross's statement. "Captain, concerns from the Pentagon regarding security and adherence to protocol hold validity. But are those concerns genuinely justified, Commander?" Captain Ross answered firmly, her voice carrying the weight of command, "or are they rooted in discomfort over expertise not always appearing in traditional forms?" Emily observed the strained exchange between the two officers, realizing her own circumstance had become a symbol of deeper tensions within the naval command structure. She reflected on her father's lessons about bravery and conviction, alongside the heavy responsibility knowledge brings. "Captain Ross," Emily spoke cautiously. "If the Pentagon deems my participation inappropriate, maybe they are correct. I have no desire to complicate matters for those earnestly doing their duties." The mature reply from someone so young rendered both officers momentarily silent. Helen felt a pang of sorrow watching her daughter embrace disappointment with the same dignity her father displayed during challenging times. Captain Ross regarded Emily for a long moment before making a choice that would shape her legacy as a leader. "Emily, what if I told you that sometimes the greatest act a person can perform is to stand firm for what is right, even when it is difficult? Dad used to say that bravery was not about the absence of fear but about doing what is right even when fear is present," Emily responded. "Your father was a man of great wisdom," Captain Ross replied. "At this moment, I believe the right course of action is to ensure the Pentagon fully grasps the gravity of what we are dealing with." She reached for her secure communication device, her face reflecting the resolve that had earned her command of one of the Navy's most critical vessels. "Commander Price, please arrange a video meeting with Rear Admiral Howard's office. It is time for an open conversation about innovation, skill, and the true essence of naval excellence." Emily felt a mix of hope and apprehension as she recognized Captain Ross was ready to confront the Pentagon's orders head-on. The situation was intensifying far beyond what she had anticipated when she first detected unusual sounds in the ship's engines. "Captain," Helen cautioned with concern. "I don't want Emily's challenges to jeopardize your career or create difficulties for your team." Jennifer Ross met Helen's gaze with calm firmness, as one who has reconciled with tough choices throughout her military tenure. "Mrs. Carter, your husband lost his life serving his nation and advancing naval technology. If I cannot defend his daughter while she strives to continue his legacy, then I am unworthy of this uniform." The words lingered, presenting a silent challenge to everyone gathered in the room. Setting the scene for a clash that would challenge the Navy's dedication to progress against its loyalty to established command systems. The secure video call connected with the sharp precision typical of military communications technology. On the central screen, Rear Admiral Kenneth Howard appeared from his Pentagon office, his uniform spotless and his demeanor firm, embodying the authority of someone used to unquestioned obedience. Captain Ross sat at the head of the table, with Emily Carter and Helen Carter on one side and Commander Alan Price on the other. Admiral Thomas King joined them, his presence lending additional gravity to what was becoming a dispute between shipboard operations and Pentagon directives. "Captain Ross," Rear Admiral Howard started without delay, "I understand you have objections to the order halting civilian participation in technical activities on your ship." "Admiral Howard," Captain Ross responded with controlled formality, I have deep reservations about a rule that disregards valid technical skills purely based on an individual's age and civilian role. Emily remained silent beside her mother, feeling the burden of being discussed both as a person and as a matter of policy. The adult spoke about her as if she were invisible, which only emphasized her sense of youth, despite the advanced technical expertise she had shown. "Captain, you surely recognize the security risks of allowing unauthorized individuals to access critical naval systems." Rear Admiral Howard went on. "Miss Carter may have good intentions, yet she does not possess the necessary clearance levels or training credentials for this kind of involvement." Admiral King leaned forward, his face reflecting deep thought. "Kenneth, with all due respect, Miss Carter identified technical issues that our certified personnel overlooked. Her input has already helped avert possible equipment malfunctions that might have influenced operational readiness." "That is exactly the issue, Thomas." Rear Admiral Howard responded. "If our skilled engineers are missing problems that even a child can spot, it reveals training gaps that must be resolved via proper procedures, not by counting on civilian consultants." Emily felt a surge of indignation at being called a civilian consultant, but she recalled her father's advice to pick her battles wisely. Nevertheless, the suggestion that her efforts somehow diminished the reputation of naval personnel upset her profoundly. "Admiral Howard," Emily spoke softly, catching everyone off guard by breaking her silence. "I never claimed the Navy engineers were wrong. I simply noticed certain things because my dad taught me to listen in a unique way." The interruption led to a tense pause as Rear Admiral Howard confronted the fact that the 12-year-old at the heart of the dispute was addressing him directly. "Miss Carter, I respect your viewpoint, yet these issues are usually managed by authorized officers." "But sir," Emily insisted with polite determination. "If I caught wind of something that might help protect sailors, wouldn't it be irresponsible to stay silent?" Helen placed a calming hand on her daughter's shoulder, acknowledging the bravery it took for Emily to speak up while also appreciating the sensitivity of military ranks. Emily allowed the officers to deliberate on the policy concerns. Captain Ross, on the other hand, admired Emily's readiness to stand up for her beliefs. "Actually, Mrs. Carter, I believe Emily makes a valuable observation. Admiral Howard, we are not dealing with confidential data or secret missions. We are addressing maintenance checks that ensure the dependable operation of equipment. The classification is not the real issue here," Rear Admiral Howard answered, his patience clearly fading. "The real concern is preserving proper authority lines and making sure operational decisions come from experienced personnel following set procedures." Commander Price, previously silent during the discussion, finally broke his silence. "Admiral Howard is right about upholding correct protocols. Miss Carter's involvement, no matter how well meant, could create a situation that weakens the established command chain." Emily observed Commander Price with interest rather than resentment. "Commander, do you believe I was mistaken to raise the concerns I heard?" "I believe," Commander Price responded cautiously, "that there are established procedures for addressing technical issues, which involve consulting with trained military personnel instead of making direct changes to operational systems. However, what if the trained staff do not perceive what I am noticing?" Emily asked with genuine perplexity. "Dad always mentioned that different individuals observe different details and that the most effective teams consider everyone's input." The straightforward reasoning in Emily's question led to another uneasy silence. Rear Admiral Howard found himself reluctantly opposing the use of accessible expertise merely because it originated from an unconventional source. Dr. Barbara Wright, who had been quietly observing at the side of the room, stepped forward, invoking the professional weight of her role as the ship's psychologist. "Admiral Howard, if I may offer a viewpoint regarding human resource optimization." "Please proceed, Doctor." "Miss Carter embodies a rare combination of technical expertise and fresh insight," Dr. Wright elaborated. "From a psychological perspective, her input highlights the importance of varied problem-solving methods. Ignoring her suggestions merely due to her age and civilian status could potentially cost the Navy valuable diagnostic skills. Rear Admiral Howard's face revealed weariness at being challenged about regulations by those beneath him. "Doctor, you make a valid point. I value your expert viewpoint, yet maintaining operational security and following established procedures must remain uncompromised for the sake of psychological theories." "Admiral," Emily said, her voice growing stronger as she gained confidence in the mature discussion. "What if we found a way for me to contribute without risking security or breaking rules?" Everyone's attention focused on Emily as she carefully applied the reasoning her father had instilled in her. "Suppose I only handled systems that are not classified and solely assisted when regular maintenance personnel requested it? That way, I would neither make decisions nor access sensitive data." Captain Ross felt a wave of respect for Emily's tactful proposal. "That sounds like a sensible middle ground. Miss Carter could act as a consulting expert on non-classified technical problems through proper military procedures." "Absolutely not," Rear Admiral Howard responded firmly. "The precedent alone is unacceptable. Civilian family members, regardless of expertise, cannot be involved in any naval operations." Emily sensed the firmness in his voice and knew no argument would change his stance. Yet she recalled her father's lessons on persistence and innovative problem-solving. "Admiral Howard," Emily said politely, "may I ask you something about my father?" The personal mention caught Rear Admiral Howard off balance. "What about your father? Did you know him during his work on? Are you familiar with the propulsion efficiency initiatives? I know Lieutenant Commander Carter's research." "Indeed." Emily reached into her pocket and took out a small notebook filled with her father James Carter's handwriting. "This is one of Dad's project journals. He recorded all his notes on acoustic diagnostics and system evaluation. Would it be acceptable if I handed this over to Navy engineers so they could learn his methods?" The proposal caused a subtle change in the atmosphere. Emily was suggesting sharing her father's expertise through official means instead of remaining personally involved in the missions. "Emily, that is very generous," Captain Jennifer Ross said gently, fully aware of the notebook's emotional value. Rear Admiral Howard examined the notebook through the video link, clearly considering the consequences of Emily's suggestion. "Miss Carter, your father's technical input was certainly important to the Navy. Then maybe his methods could assist other engineers in detecting issues as he did," Emily proposed. "I could help interpret his notes so others who never worked with him would understand." Helen Carter observed her daughter handle the complicated political situation with a maturity that was both remarkable and heartrending. Emily was essentially offering to forfeit her direct participation to protect her father's heritage. Admiral Thomas King saw the wisdom behind Emily's offer. "Kenneth, this method would address your concerns about security and procedures while maintaining access to important diagnostic methods." Dr. Wright further explained that it would give Miss Carter a valuable opportunity to honor her father's legacy and contribute to the improvement of naval standards. Rear Admiral Howard remained silent for nearly 60 seconds. Clearly considering the political and strategic consequences of different options. At last, he spoke in a calm voice that reflected the seriousness of an official decision. "Miss Carter, I am prepared to entertain a restricted arrangement where you help record your father's diagnostic techniques for inclusion in naval training programs. Yet, any direct involvement with operational systems will remain off-limits." Emily felt a blend of disappointment and relief. This was not the acknowledgement she had hoped to receive, but it allowed her to stay connected to her father's contributions and give something valuable back to the Navy. "I understand, Admiral Howard," Emily said with quiet dignity. "I only wish my father's knowledge could be used to protect sailors." Captain Jennifer Ross regarded Emily with deep admiration, recognizing the grace with which she accepted a compromise that did not fully reflect her potential but maintained her father's legacy. Admiral Howard, I believe Miss Carter's proposal embodies the kind of dedication and creativity that strengthen the Navy, perhaps, replied Rear Admiral Howard. Commander Wells will collaborate with your team to set up the proper procedures for recording Lieutenant Commander Carter's methods. As the video meeting concluded, Emily sat silently, reflecting on the result. She had achieved something important, yet it seemed less significant compared to the hands-on impact she had made over recent days. Helen wrapped her arm around her daughter's shoulders and said, "Emily, I am so proud of the way you managed that. Your father would have been impressed by your maturity and tact." Emily replied gently, "I just wanted to continue helping, but I suppose sometimes helping means finding ways to operate within the system instead of trying to alter it." Admiral King observed Emily with a new level of admiration. "Miss Carter, what you accomplished today was more challenging than any technical problem. You managed to safeguard your father's work while honoring the institution's concerns. That is the sign of a true leader." Emily lifted her gaze to Admiral King, recalling his earlier doubt and dismissiveness. "Admiral, do you think Dad would have been proud of how this unfolded?" Thomas King considered Lieutenant Commander James Carter, a man he respected as both a skilled engineer and a devoted parent. "Emily, your father devoted his career to improving naval systems. Now, you have found a way to make the system better for everyone involved. I believe he would have been very proud indeed." Receiving recognition from someone who had once doubted her meant far more to Emily Carter than any formal technical award could have offered. It represented a pivotal moment in her realization of both her father's enduring influence and her own capability to uphold his work. About 2 weeks afterward, Emily found herself at the Norfolk Naval Base Library, surrounded by piles of her father's engineering journals and working on a laptop provided by the Navy's Training Development Division. Lieutenant Michelle Lewis sat nearby, helping to transform James Carter's intricate technical notes into training programs accessible to Navy staff of different expertise levels. "Emily, your father's insights into harmonic frequency patterns are remarkably detailed," Lieutenant Lewis remarked while examining a page filled with mathematical equations and hand-sketched acoustic waveforms. "How did he manage to create measurement methods with such precision?" Emily looked up from the notebook she was copying, her expression lighting up with fond memories of weekends spent in her dad's workshop. She explained, "Dad built a special soundproof booth in our garage so he could capture engine noises without interference. He taught me to sit there for long hours, learning to recognize various frequency patterns." Lieutenant Lewis reflected, "That is why your diagnostic skills are so accurate. You did not simply learn theory, you gained hands-on experience that developed your expertise." Documenting James Carter's methods turned out to be far more complicated than anyone had expected. His records uncovered years filled with groundbreaking ideas about acoustic diagnostics, especially techniques to detect issues that usual monitoring systems often overlooked. Emily found herself acting not only as a translator but also as the sole person who truly grasped the real-world use of his theoretical insights. Frank Skipper Nelson, Emily's elderly neighbor and a retired Navy captain, unexpectedly became a valuable partner in this challenging process. At 67, Frank held a deep institutional memory about naval engineering methods that connected traditional diagnostic practices with present-day technologies. "Emily," Frank said while entering the library, carrying a box with extra materials, "I brought some of the acoustic analysis devices your father borrowed from the base workshop. I thought you might want to demonstrate his techniques with the actual tools he built." Emily's eyes grew wide as she identified equipment from her father's workshop she had not seen since he passed away. "Skipper Frank, where did all this come from?" she asked. "Your mother asked me to clean out the garage storage last month," Frank explained softly. "Helen thought you would want to use your dad's gear for this project, but she wasn't ready to sort through it herself." The intense emotional impact of handling her father's real research instruments almost overwhelmed Emily. However, she also experienced a deep bond with his work that went beyond simple remembrance. These were the devices he had used to create the methods she was now sharing with others. Lieutenant Lewis understood the importance of this moment and gave Emily the space to absorb her emotions. "Take all the time you need, Emily. There is no rush," he said kindly. Emily gently picked up an acoustic sensor from the container, observing her father's exact calibration marks and the adjustments he had made to enhance its sensitivity. Her father always said that tools served as extensions of an engineer's perception. He dedicated many years to refining these modifications. The library door then opened to reveal journalist Amanda Cole, who had been tracking Emily's journey for a series covering innovation within military families. At 34 years old, Amanda had earned her reputation by uncovering personal stories amid larger organizational themes. "Miss Carter, I hope I'm not disturbing you," Amanda said with respect. "I was hoping you might share how your father's work is being integrated into official Navy training programs." Emily glanced at Lieutenant Lewis, who gave an encouraging nod. The Navy had authorized limited media access to the project's documentation to spotlight innovation and family contributions to military success. "Miss Cole, I suppose it is all right to discuss it," Emily replied cautiously. "What would you like to ask?" Amanda settled into a nearby seat, her recording device visible but discreet. "I am curious about how a 12-year-old's knowledge is influencing the Navy's approach to technical education," Emily Carter remarked with interest. "I do not believe I am changing anything," Emily responded humbly. "I am simply assisting others in understanding what my father already mastered." Lieutenant Lewis then clarified the situation. The methods Miss Carter's father created were not part of the Navy's usual training. He pioneered new diagnostic approaches that blended classic acoustic techniques with a modern grasp of system dynamics. Currently, the Navy is integrating these innovations into our engineering programs. Amanda took notes, impressed by the smooth cooperation between Emily and the young officer. Amanda asked, "Emily, how does it feel knowing your father's work will be taught to upcoming naval engineers?" Emily paused thoughtfully, aware her answer would reach an audience beyond the naval sphere. "It makes me feel like my father continues to protect sailors even though he is not here anymore." This simple yet meaningful reply revealed deep themes of legacy and devotion, which Amanda knew her readers would appreciate. Amanda then inquired, "Do you intend to pursue a career as a naval engineer yourself one day?" "Perhaps," Emily answered thoughtfully. "But my father always said the most important thing is to find ways to help others. Whether through engineering or different paths." The discussion was interrupted when Congressman Peter Graham arrived, drawn to Norfolk by his dedication to veterans' issues and his desire to see the documentation project in action. At 49 years old, Peter had built his political reputation on advocating for military families and making sure their sacrifices received the recognition they deserved. "Miss Carter," Congressman Graham said with a warm tone, "I have heard extraordinary things about the work you are doing here." Emily stood up politely, still getting used to the attention from such an influential figure. "Thank you, Congressman Graham. Lieutenant Lewis has been assisting me in transforming my father's notes into something accessible to others. That is precisely the kind of innovation that strengthens our armed forces," Peter responded. "Your father's dedication and now your own efforts showcase the invaluable knowledge held within military families." Amanda sensed a chance to broaden the discussion. "Congressman, does Emily's experience imply that the military should be more receptive to contributions from family members?" Peter carefully chose his words, fully aware that military officials would closely analyze his answer. "I believe Emily's story shows that expertise can emerge from unexpected places and that organizations benefit greatly when they embrace innovation." Emily followed the conversation with increasing awareness of its wider significance. What began as her personal story had now become part of a much larger dialogue about institutional progress and the importance of recognizing diverse sources of wisdom. Dr. Barbara Wright entered the library with the calm authority of someone carrying important news. "Emily, I have an update from Captain Ross that I believe you will find quite intriguing." "What sort of update, Dr. Wright?" "The maintenance procedures you suggested for the port turbine bearing were finished just yesterday," announced Dr. Wright. "The repairs led to an improvement in fuel efficiency of 4% and completely eliminated the harmonic irregularities you had detected." Emily experienced a wave of satisfaction that was both personal and professional. Her father's methods had not only pinpointed problems but had also resulted in tangible enhancements in the ship's performance. Lieutenant Lewis glanced up from her notes with clear enthusiasm. "Emily, this is measurable proof of the effectiveness of your diagnostic techniques. The Navy values data that confirms operational advancements." Even more importantly, Frank Nelson added with pride like a devoted grandfather, "It shows that your father's contributions continue to have a meaningful impact." Congressman Graham acknowledged the importance of the findings. "Miss Carter, documented improvements such as these offer solid evidence of the significance of creative thinking within military operations." Emily realized that the successful repairs symbolized more than just confirmation of her skills. They proved that her father's legacy remains instrumental in sustaining naval excellence while respecting the established structures that ensure military efficiency. "Will this information be part of the training materials we are preparing?" Emily asked Lieutenant Lewis. "Definitely. Case studies that show clear results are the best instructional tools we can offer." Amanda Cole was quickly jotting down notes, recognizing that proving success added a powerful ending to Emily's account. "Emily, knowing that your father's methods brought real operational advancements, what are your thoughts on the decision to limit your direct role in ship operations?" Emily considered the question as she examined one of her father's acoustic sensors, feeling the weight of his innovations and the care in his workmanship. "I believe my dad would say the most important thing is passing on knowledge to those who can make practical use of it. It matters less whether I am the one applying it myself than ensuring it helps keep people safe." This mature outlook impressed everyone present, especially Congressman Graham, who had witnessed how influence and fame could corrupt anyone, regardless of age. Emily's emphasis on service beyond personal gain echoed the finest traditions of military families. Dr. Wright watched the exchange with keen interest, noting how Emily had transformed her grief into a drive that went beyond personal recognition. "Emily, your father would be incredibly proud of the way you have managed everything," Dr. Wright remarked. "I hope so," Emily answered softly. "At times I doubt whether I am intelligent enough to fully grasp everything he shared with me." Frank Nelson laughed softly, carrying the wisdom that comes with age and experience. "Emily, the fact that you are concerned about this shows you understand far more than you realize. Your father often said the finest engineers were those who recognized how much they still needed to learn." As the afternoon session wrapped up, Emily glanced around the library at the adults who had committed themselves to safeguarding her father's heritage. She had begun this journey as a sorrowful child wishing to honor her father's memory. Yet she was emerging as someone who appreciated the intricate link between personal insight and broader institutional transformation. Lieutenant Lewis started gathering the documentation materials, already envisioning the next stage of training development. "Emily, we have achieved remarkable progress. Your father's methods will aid naval engineers for countless years ahead." Carefully, Emily placed her father's tools back into their protective case, realizing that this chapter of her involvement was coming to an end. Instead of feeling sorrow over the conclusion, she experienced a sense of fulfillment knowing she had secured a way for James Carter's innovative ideas to keep advancing naval excellence long after his own story had been forgotten. Half a year later, Emily stood in the auditorium of the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode. On the island, all eyes were fixed on Admiral Thomas King as he stepped up to the podium to speak to a crowd of senior naval officers, engineering experts, and advocates for military families. The Carter Acoustic Diagnostic Protocol had now become an official part of the Navy training programs, and this event was meant to honor the achievements of Lieutenant Commander James Carter and his daughter. Helen sat next to Emily in the front row, dressed in her finest outfit, carrying the quiet pride of someone whose family's sacrifice had been turned into a permanent institutional achievement. The past several months had brought profound transformations in their lives, but the most meaningful was Emily's deepening realization of her role within a broader narrative of service, progress, and heritage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral King began, his voice resonating with the authority earned through his own evolution from doubt to support. "We are here today to honor contributions that challenge our preconceived ideas about expertise, age, and where innovation originates within our naval ranks." Emily felt a flutter of nervous excitement, knowing that hundreds had gathered specifically to celebrate her father's work and her involvement in safeguarding it. Though the spotlight sometimes felt daunting, she had learned to concentrate on the significance behind the tribute rather than the acclaim itself. "6 months ago," Admiral King went on, "I encountered a 12-year-old girl who asserted she could. I first encountered skepticism when it came to diagnosing issues with our most advanced naval systems, shaped by many years of experience rooted in traditional hierarchies and established beliefs about expertise." Emily Carter recalled that initial meeting clearly, especially Admiral King's dismissive chuckle and his firm belief that no child could offer valuable insights into naval operations. His change in perspective was slow yet deeply meaningful, mirroring wider shifts in how the Navy embraced innovation and the sharing of knowledge. "What I learned from Emily Carter," Admiral King said while looking at her, "is that expertise does not always come in the forms we expect, and our institutions grow stronger when they stay receptive to wisdom from surprising places." Rear Admiral Jennifer Ross, promoted after her principled leadership during the Constellation incident, rose to speak to the audience. Her advancement was widely accepted as a tribute to her skill in combining forward-thinking ideas with the Navy's responsibilities. She announced that the Carter Diagnostic Protocol is now in use at 17 naval bases, enabling early detection of mechanical issues that could have resulted in losses worth millions of dollars and threatened mission readiness. Emily felt profound pride, knowing that her father's methods were helping avoid equipment breakdowns that might put sailors' lives at risk. The once abstract idea of making an impact became tangible through verified advancements in naval maintenance methods. Lieutenant Michelle Lewis, now Lieutenant Commander Lewis after her recent promotion, stepped up to the microphone carrying a folder filled with data on implementation outcomes. Over the last half-year, naval engineers trained in sound diagnostic techniques detected 43 possible equipment failures before they became critical, leading to projected savings of $12 million and averting 3 possible mission failures. These figures signified more than just financial gains to Emily Carter. They reflected issues her father's expertise had resolved, despite his absence to witness the achievements. Each avoided failure served as proof of his forward-thinking approach and commitment to enhancing naval operations. Dr. Barbara Wright then took the stage to discuss the psychological and educational aspects linked to the Carter Protocol introduction. Beyond its technical success, this initiative highlighted the importance of passing knowledge across generations and safeguarding specialized skills within military families. Emily had contributed to several research projects exploring how technical expertise is shared in these families, assisting Dr. Wright in uncovering the distinct educational processes that allowed a 12-year-old to grasp complex engineering principles. Most importantly, Dr. Wright emphasized the profound value this intergenerational cooperation brought to both the program and the individuals involved. Wright went on, "Emily Carter's experience has demonstrated that children from military households often have a profound grasp of their parents' professional expertise and that this insight is a valuable but underutilized asset for institutional learning." This statement struck a chord across the auditorium as officers contemplated their own children's exposure to military knowledge and the possible input family members could offer to enhance operational effectiveness. Congressman Peter Graham then stepped forward to discuss the policy ramifications of Emily's experience. The Carter case prompted the enactment of legislation launching the Military Family Innovation Initiative, designed to establish official channels allowing family members to contribute technical insights while adhering to security standards and organizational procedures. Emily recognized that her personal journey had become part of a larger movement to acknowledge and leverage the specialized skills present within military communities. This law would open doors for other military children and spouses to share their expertise without endangering operational confidentiality. Congressman Graham highlighted that this program appreciates how military families acquire unique competencies through their close connection to specialized activities and that, when properly integrated into suitable institutions, these skills can bolster national defense. The formal presentations closed with the reveal of a commemorative plaque honoring Lieutenant Commander James Carter's contributions to naval engineering. Emily felt tears welling up as she saw her father's name permanently etched alongside acknowledgement of his groundbreaking diagnostic methods. Yet the most touching moment arrived when Admiral Thomas King invited Emily to join him at the podium to deliver the closing remarks. Standing next to the man who had once doubted her talents, Emily realized how much had shifted for both of them. "Miss Carter," Admiral King said, "would you like to share your thoughts on what this recognition means to you and your family?" Emily glanced at the crowd of naval officers, engineers, and family supporters. Knowing her words would be preserved as part of the official event, she reflected on her father's lessons about bravery, dedication, and the duty that knowledge demands. "Admiral King, when this began, I simply wanted people to pay attention when I noticed something important," Emily spoke with calm despite her nerves. "I never imagined that trying to help would lead to all of this." She paused to collect her thoughts, considering the wider impact of her journey. "Dad always said the greatest value of knowledge is sharing it with those who can use it to assist others. I believe that is exactly what happened here." Emily pointed toward the commemorative plaque displaying her father's name. "This is not really about me being clever or extraordinary. It is about my father's work continuing to protect sailors and the Navy being open to listening when someone presents valuable insights." The straightforwardness and insightfulness of her words cast a deep silence over the audience. Here was a young woman who had successfully navigated complicated institutional politics and emerged with a clear appreciation of service that went beyond personal fame. "But mainly," Emily added, "I believe Dad would want people to understand that great ideas can originate from anyone and that the most fitting way to honor someone's legacy is to ensure their knowledge keeps benefiting others long after they have passed away." Admiral King found himself genuinely touched by Emily's thoughtful view on legacy and dedication. "Miss Carter, your father would certainly be proud of how you have upheld his efforts and principles." When the event came to a close, Emily was approached by junior naval officers eager to learn more about acoustic diagnostic methods, along with military children inspired by her story. She realized her role had shifted from simply conveying her father's expertise to actively promoting innovation and inclusion within military circles. Helen Carter observed her daughter engage with admirals and enlisted sailors alike with sincere respect and authentic curiosity, recognizing that Emily had grown remarkably. Her leadership abilities went far beyond her technical expertise, and the sorrow and loss that had first driven Emily's involvement were transformed into a clear sense of mission that would guide her for many years ahead. Frank Skipper Nelson, now regarded as an informal advisor in the documentation process, approached Emily with the satisfied look of someone who had witnessed extraordinary progress. He said, "Emily, your father would be astonished by all you have achieved, but I believe what he would take the greatest pride in is the person you have become through this journey." Emily glanced around the reception area, noticing his naval team discussing the application of her father's methods and planning future advancements inspired by his fundamental work. The acoustic diagnostic tools he had adapted were now standard equipment in naval training centers, and his theoretical models were being studied by engineering students across the military education system. She then asked Skipper Frank, "Do you think Dad realized that his efforts would end up benefiting so many people?" Frank pondered the question while watching ongoing conversations focused on technical progress and organizational transformation. He replied, "Emily, I believe your father understood that solid engineering has a way of expanding beyond its initial goals, but I doubt he could have foreseen that his most significant legacy would be raising a daughter who could educate the Navy on bravery, determination, and the true essence of service. As Emily and Helen got ready to leave the event, Admiral King, no change, approached them with the respectful demeanor of someone who had learned valuable lessons about leadership and humility. Mrs. Carter, Miss Carter, thank you for your patience with an old admiral who had to understand that wisdom does not always come in the forms we expect, Admiral King said earnestly. Emily, you have shown me that real leadership is about recognizing and fostering excellence whenever it is found. Emily glanced at the man who once dismissed her as simply another military child playing with ideas beyond her grasp. Admiral King, I believe you taught me something important as well. What is that? He asked. That even when others doubt you at first, if you continue doing what is right and remain respectful, eventually they may listen and perhaps even become allies. Admiral King smiled with genuine kindness, realizing that Emily's words expressed something vital about leadership, transformation, and the need to keep dignity intact despite skepticism. As they strolled toward the parking area, Emily thought about the path that began with her simple observation of unusual sounds in a ship's engine. That initial courage to speak up despite doubts led to organizational reforms, new policies, and honors that would protect her father's memory for future naval generations. Mom, do you think this is truly the end or just the start? Emily inquired as they arrived at their vehicle. Helen glanced back at the Naval War College where officers remained engaged in discussions about the ramifications of the Carter Protocol and were devising plans for future applications of advanced diagnostic methods. Emily, I believe this is merely the start. Your father's contributions will keep benefiting people for many years ahead. And you have proven that his most significant accomplishment was raising a daughter who truly grasps the essence of service. Emily settled into the front passenger seat. Her father's Naval Academy ring was still suspended from the chain around her neck. She recognized that she had discovered a way to honor his legacy while carving out her own future. The technical expertise he had imparted would keep protecting sailors, yet more importantly, his teachings about bravery, honor, and dedication would direct her personal efforts in a world that demanded both progress and prudence. As they drove away from Newport, Emily already found her mind wandering to the acoustic engineering program she intended to pursue at university, the naval career path she might follow, and the ways she could keep enhancing the systems that safeguarded people. Her father's heritage had become her solid foundation, but her journey forward would be her own design. It was shaped by the belief that the highest form of service is using one's own talents to help others achieve their goals. The tale that had started with a 12-year-old girl recognizing a flaw in a ship's engine transformed into a powerful example of the significance of paying attention, the courage to voice concerns, and the lasting importance of wisdom passed down through generations. Emily Carter discovered that genuine expertise was not about being the most intelligent person present but about uplifting everyone around her to better safeguard those who mattered most. 3 years had elapsed since the Naval War College ceremony, and 15-year-old Emily Carter stood on the deck of the USS Constitution during her summer internship with the Naval Historical Center's Youth Engineering program. Her auburn hair, now flowing to her shoulders, fluttered in the Boston Harbor breeze as she collaborated with professional conservators to protect the acoustic legacy of America's oldest active naval vessel. The years in between had brought notable transformations to both Emily and the wider naval community. The Carter Protocol had grown beyond basic diagnostic methods to include a thorough strategy for preventative care that combined human insight with technological accuracy. Emily herself had changed from a grieving child carrying her father's knowledge to a determined teenager forging her own path in naval engineering. Master Chief Robert M. Mallister, currently serving as Emily's mentor coordinator, approached with a calm step that reflected the respect he had earned over time. Experience and ability took precedence over age or rank. At 58, Mac had directed the rollout of the Carter Protocol throughout the Atlantic Fleet and had become one of Emily Carter's most vocal supporters within the naval community. Emily, we have some visitors from the Pentagon who want to discuss the Advanced Diagnostic Project with you, Mac said, his weathered face reflecting the pride of someone who had witnessed extraordinary talent develop over the years. Emily glanced up from the acoustic sensor she was fine-tuning, noting the solemn look that hinted this was far from a routine meeting. "What kind of project is it, Master Chief?" The Navy was crafting a new program that merged traditional diagnostic methods with artificial intelligence technologies, Mac explained. They were seeking her perspective on preserving the human aspects essential to effective acoustic analysis. This invitation marked a major shift in how the military valued Emily's input. She was no longer just interpreting her father's work. Now she was respected as a specialist whose expertise could influence the future of naval maintenance protocols. Dr. Patricia Winters, currently heading Naval Family Innovation Programs, appeared from the lower decks holding a tablet filled with data on implementation across global installations. What had begun as Emily's personal initiative had expanded into a large-scale effort to identify and apply expertise within military circles. "Emily, the visitors include some individuals you have not encountered before, but also several familiar faces," Dr. Winters said with a knowing grin. "Admiral Ross is leading the group and has brought some intriguing proposals for your review." The mention of Admiral Ross brought a soft glow to Emily's face that reflected years of guidance and true friendship. Jennifer Ross had grown beyond a mere professional associate. She had become a close family friend who appreciated both Emily's abilities and her desire to grow as a typical teenager alongside her technological endeavors. "Is this regarding the college preparation program we talked about?" Emily inquired, her tone exuding the assurance of someone used to engaging in high-level conversations about her future. "Among other things," Dr. Winters responded tactfully. "But I believe it is best if Admiral Ross outlines the full extent of what they are planning." About 20 minutes later, Emily sat in the historic captain's cabin aboard the ship, surrounded by naval officers whose careers had been influenced by the breakthroughs she had helped introduce. Admiral Ross, now adorned with the 3 stars of a vice admiral, led the gathering with the poise of someone who mastered the art of blending long-standing traditions with forward-thinking ideas. "Emily, thank you for taking time away from your internship to meet with us," Admiral Ross began. "What we are." The discussion today marked a significant advancement in the project that began 3 years ago. Sitting next to Admiral Ross was Captain Michael Stevens, who had once been a classmate of Emily Carter's father at Annapolis and now led the Navy's Advanced Technology Integration Office. At 47, Michael's career was dedicated to connecting groundbreaking research with practical naval usage. Captain Stevens told Emily Carter, "Your father's diagnostic approaches have proven so effective that we are now exploring ways to merge them with developing artificial intelligence systems. The aim is to build hybrid diagnostic platforms that blend human intuition with the accuracy of machines." Emily leaned forward with sincere curiosity, realizing this was precisely the type of technological progress her father would have supported. She asked Captain Stevens how human operators would interact with AI systems in real diagnostic scenarios. Admiral Ross answered, "That is exactly where we require your knowledge. Computers can be programmed to detect acoustic patterns, but duplicating the intuitive leaps human analysts make when spotting unusual issues remains a challenge." This difficulty thrilled Emily because it combined all she had learned about human perception and technological potential. Over the last 3 years, her expertise had grown far beyond her father's original methods, encompassing a wider range of knowledge and innovative approaches. Questions arose regarding how humans and machines might collaborate efficiently. Commander Lisa Chen, daughter of Captain Jennifer Ross and now an accomplished naval engineer herself, introduced technical details for the suggested hybrid systems. "Emily, we have been examining your diagnostic approaches and trying to grasp what makes human acoustic analysis so successful in scenarios where conventional sensors fail." Emily carefully reviewed the blueprints, observing the advanced sensor configurations and processing features that the new systems would include. "Commander Chen, I believe the main distinction lies in humans being able to identify patterns that do not fit usual classifications. Dad always mentioned that the most hazardous problems emerge in unexpected ways." "Precisely." Captain Stevens agreed. Our AI solutions excel at detecting familiar failure patterns but face challenges with novel issues that do not align with their training models. It is crucial to have human operators who can direct the systems toward examining unusual findings. The conversation lasted more than an hour as Emily shared insights about the mental processes behind effective acoustic diagnostics. Her explanations displayed a deep understanding of both human perception and machine learning that impressed even the most seasoned engineers present. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a civilian scientist from the Naval Research Laboratory, diligently took notes throughout the entire discussion. Miss Carter, your evaluation indicates that successful human-AI collaboration demands systems capable of reacting to the operator's intuition rather than merely delivering automated results. That seems accurate, Emily responded thoughtfully. The finest diagnostic outcomes emerge when humans and machines each contribute their strengths. Machines excel at precise measurements and retaining extensive data. Meanwhile, humans are able to sense when something is amiss, even without immediately understanding the reason. Admiral Ross realized that Emily's viewpoint embodied the innovative mindset necessary for the Navy to sustain its technological edge. Emily, we want you to think about joining the creation of these hybrid systems through an accelerated education initiative that merges finishing high school with advanced technical instruction. This offer represented a chance that would drastically change Emily's academic path while respecting her dedication to naval service. Admiral Ross, what would the program entail? It involves collaboration with MIT and the Naval Academy to develop a curriculum aimed at preparing you for both civilian engineering mastery and leadership within the Navy. Admiral Ross explained, you would earn a high school diploma alongside substantial advancement toward higher degrees in acoustical engineering and artificial intelligence. Emily felt the gravity of the choice, knowing that accepting it meant committing to a challenging future. Emily Carter was eager to honor her father's legacy while establishing her own professional path. Could I talk this over with my mother before deciding? Naturally, Admiral Ross reassured her. This is exactly the kind of decision where involving your family is essential. Helen Carter, who was now a coordinator for Military Family Support Services, had been waiting at the Harbor Visitor Center while Emily was in her meeting. The last 3 years had brought her life significant positive changes, including fulfilling work that helped other military families face challenges similar to those she had experienced. How did the meeting go, sweetheart? Helen asked as Emily joined her on the pier overlooking Boston Harbor. Emily explained the proposed program, carefully watching her mother's face for any sign of worry or excitement. Mom, this would require a serious commitment to naval service, but it would also offer amazing chances to carry on Dad's efforts. Helen had prepared for this moment for a long time, understanding that Emily's skills and passions would soon lead her to crucial career choices. Emily, what does your heart say about this opportunity? It feels exactly like what Dad would want me to do, Emily answered without a second thought. Not because I have to follow his footsteps exactly, but because it allows me to apply all he taught me to tackle problems that truly matter. Helen listened quietly, knowing her daughter's dedication was heartfelt. She smiled with the insight of someone who had learned to trust her daughter's judgment after years of witnessing Emily navigate complicated situations with impressive maturity. I believe you should give it serious thought. Your father always believed that the best choices were those that felt both demanding and right. As they strolled along the harbor, Emily reflected on the path that had led her to this point. 3 years ago, she had been a grieving child striving to honor her father's legacy by sharing his technical expertise. Now, she was being invited to help shape the future of naval engineering through innovative cooperation between human knowledge and artificial intelligence. Mom, if I take part in this program, it means I am committing to serve in the Navy after graduation, Emily explained. Are you truly okay with that idea? Helen paused and turned to look at her daughter, recognizing both the 15-year-old who still needed guidance and the young adult capable of making life-changing decisions. Emily, your father served because he believed in protecting people and advancing knowledge that would keep others safe. If you decide on naval service for these same reasons, I will be proud to support your choice. Their conversation was cut short by the arrival of Master Chief Mal Lister, who was coordinating with the Pentagon delegation about the logistics and schedules. Emily, Admiral Ross requested me to inform you that there is no rush to make a decision immediately. The program is not set to start until next summer, which means you have ample time to weigh all the consequences carefully. Emily felt grateful for the understanding, but she also sensed that her initial reaction towards the opportunity was genuinely favorable. Master Chief, do you believe I am prepared for participation in such an advanced program? Max observed Emily with the keen insight of someone who had guided numerous young sailors and officers throughout the years. Emily, 3 years ago, you instructed an entire crew of skilled engineers new perspectives on their responsibilities. Since that time, you have kept improving your knowledge while helping to apply initiatives that enhanced naval operations worldwide. I believe you are ready to face any obstacles you choose to pursue. Receiving affirmation from an individual whose judgment she sincerely valued helped solidify Emily's thoughts regarding the suggested program. As they proceeded back toward the Constitution, Emily began envisioning the opportunities awaiting her. Advanced education alongside top researchers, working together with naval engineers on pioneering projects, and the chance to contribute to breakthroughs that would safeguard service members for generations to come. Master Chief, when Admiral Ross states this program represents the next stage of Dad's legacy, what exactly does she intend? Emily inquired. I think she means your father's methods were merely the starting point, Mac responded thoughtfully. What you have helped develop during the past 3 years is a fresh method in naval engineering that appreciates both advanced technology and human intuition. The following challenge is discovering how to merge the strongest aspects of these two approaches. Emily Carter nodded, realizing that the suggested program was not a conclusion but a progression toward the next stage of her impact on naval innovation. Her father's legacy laid the groundwork, yet her future would be shaped by her own creativity and leadership. As the sun dipped below the horizon at Boston Harbor, Emily made her choice with the assurance of someone who had learned to rely on both her skills and principles. The accelerated initiative would be demanding, but it also offered her the chance to carry on the work that gave her life purpose while paying tribute to the memory of the father who instilled in her that knowledge was only meaningful when used to serve others. Mom, Emily said as they got ready to leave the historic vessel, I want to accept Admiral Ross's offer. I believe Dad would be proud that his efforts opened doors like this, and I am curious to see how far we can advance this. Helen Carter smiled with the deep contentment of a mother who had witnessed her daughter turn personal grief into meaningful contribution. Then we will make it happen, darling. Your father's greatest wish was for his knowledge to keep helping people long after he was gone. Through you, that wish has come to life in ways he never dreamed possible. As they approached their car, Emily felt the weight of her father's Naval Academy ring resting against her chest, realizing she was prepared to start earning her own tokens of dedication and accomplishment. The path that began when a young girl of 12 noticed issues overlooked by grown-ups was now unfolding with a 15-year-old choosing to devote her skills to safeguarding those who serve their country with bravery and honor. That chapter concluded here. Coming up next are 2 extraordinary tales waiting for you right on your screen. If you found this story captivating, you definitely will not want to miss what follows. Simply click to view and remember to subscribe.